Now it's time to welcome our first guest, Bunni Dybnis, the founder of Aging Life Matters. She's also the director of professional services at Live Home. She has over 30 years of experience providing services related to aging, long-term care, as well as other life transitions. She's a licensed marriage and family therapist and a certified care manager. Thanks for joining us today and welcome to the Income Generation.
It's a pleasure being here.
Now, this term sandwich generation has been around for a while. But why do you personally think that this is a growing concern for people of our generation?
That's a great question. And I have certain ideas about it because I've definitely seen it changed in the last 25 or so years that I've been involved. One, that families are living more at a distance. There was an LA Times article that talked about 60% of adult children will live at least 100 miles away from their parents. So that brings with it its own challenges. The other is women are working more. There was a time when they took care of their kids and their kids moved off and they took care of their parents. Now they're working in professions are even more than 8 hours a day, and that's always a challenge. The other thing is when people are living longer, and the 85 plus age group is really the fastest growing population that we have. And that brings certain challenges along with that. And finally, women are having babies later. So at my first grandchild, and my daughter-in-law can attest, they make it very complicated taking care of babies and children. They take it seriously. And again, they become the sandwich generation and sometimes the club sandwich generation.
And you remember a few years ago, the movie Failure to Launch, right?
Yes.
Is it my imagination, or maybe in some times, are we seeing a situation right now, and maybe it's because the unemployment rate's down to 3.5%, but there's also children staying at home with their families later than maybe before?
Definitely that's an issue, and that's the good news and the bad news. What became assistance for the adult children to keep them home, all of a sudden as people age and need care, that child that was unemployed or on his fourth divorce or whatever is now can be an assistance to the parents too. So you can look at both sides of that coin.
Yeah, so you got people living longer, parents living longer, so we have to take care of them longer. Our children staying at home longer. Less and less of a chance that my spouse is staying at home and could take the brunt of this. How about college debt? How much do you see college debt being an issue now, where more parents are taking over the college debt of their kids, which is strapping them financially so they can't help their parents, i.e. the grandparents, as much as maybe they would otherwise have liked to?
There's a number of implications, and there's two sides to this coin. There's, half the population is straddled with debt, and finances are really an issue, and that college debt is part. The other half is these boomer parents that are really supporting their adult children and buying houses and those kinds of things because they can. So it's complicated.
How about moving away? It seems like before families would grow up in a town, they'd work in a town and everything else, whether it's a different career path these days or what you might call it. It seems like, if you have 3 children, you're lucky if one of them stays near you in your hometown. The other 2, as they grow up, you have to travel to see. So how much complexity does that add to the sandwich generation?
It's really complex, and that's why I started with it, because it's all these issues. They move away, not only nationally, but internationally. It's not the world has just changed. So we've got those. And if you live in a place like I do, Los Angeles, being 25 miles away from your parents, it might be closer to go to New York. So lots of issues involved in proximity.
And even if you're not taking care of your children, because you had children younger, as you mentioned, you might have grandchildren. You might want to go see your grandchildren, and now you really can't because you're taking care of your mom and dad right in your home. So even then, it's not the sandwich generation. I guess we'd call that the triple-decker generation problem right there. So that's right. And by the way, and we need to leave it right here for a minute for a commercial break. We'll be right back in a minute, though, Bunni. So please stay with us, and you stay with us too. We'll be right back here in a moment, right here on the Income Generation. We'll be right back. But right now, let's welcome back Bunni Dybnis, founder of Aging Life Matters. Bunni's also a licensed marriage and family therapist and certified care manager. Thanks for sticking around.
It's a pleasure.
Okay, so you're a therapist, right? That means that you put people down on the proverbial sofa, right? Of course, this is from the old Bob Newhart days. I'm dating myself, I know. And they're telling you everything. So how much of the stress that comes from these sandwich generation problems is financial in terms of what you see in working with people?
Probably in terms of conflict, it's probably the majority of the issue, and it can go anywhere from not having the resources to parents spending the money and those issues that come along to children thinking they're entitled to the money to where do you give the resources to, where do you focus on? Is it, for adult children and family caregivers, do they take care of their children in a college fund? Do they put it in retirement for their own money? Do they pay off college debt, as you said? Or do they keep their family member in the home and pay for care because they can't afford it rather than putting them in a state-funded nursing home? So those are huge issues.
Sure, and just saving enough for yourself so they can live through retirement, because you might live to be 100 years old. You never know that. So you talked about putting people at home versus in a facility. Can you talk then as a therapist about some of the emotional anguish that people go through when trying to make that decision? Because that doesn't seem like an easy one.
Yeah, really good question. And this is a question I get every day. One of it has to do certainly with preference. And the preference for 85% of people is to stay home. And then we have to look at the realistic expectation and what home means. So we look at, are they able, what it's going to take to keep them home, what kind of informal supports they have. Some people have kids around or friends or churches that can help with care, or do they have financial ability to stay home? And the finances are, again, a big part of that. Some people will get reverse mortgages to take care of that. Others, and particularly for children, don't want to touch their inheritance with that. So we've got all kinds of issues of being home. Sometimes it's a spouse, and by keeping somebody home, especially with advanced dementia, where it's a balance that they may realistically want to stay home, but the behavior, the expense of it, the emotional toll, it doesn't make sense. So there's a whole hour and a half on this that I could talk about the difference. And some people, they move to be near kids. The socialization of moving into a senior facility is terrific. So it really depends.
So, it's interesting because the stress can ruin our health. We may be taking care of an aging parent. We may be in good health, but the stress of being part of that sandwich generation could really harm us in many ways physiologically, not just mentally. So in the 40 seconds we have left, tell our viewers, if you will, give them some words of wisdom about some of the things they can do to protect themselves from this happening down the road to the best that you know how.
Thanks. And it's probably the key to all of this is I look at the whole family. It's not just the older adults. So when you take in the needs of the adult children, the family, the spouse, the children, and make your decisions according to everything. So you can reduce that and learn to say no and communicate is probably the best thing that I can say, and get help if you can't do it on your own.
Communicate and learn to say no. I love that. Good words of wisdom. Bunny, thanks so much for being part of the show.
It's been a pleasure. Take care.
You stay with us. We'll be right back here with more coming up on the income generation in just a moment.